Welcome back to the continuation of the planking. I left off at 6 rows of planks, and now I've gone up to 8. To do the first 6 was the same way that I explained, just to put the front and back piece, but now I've changed it a little bit because I've noticed that when I was adding the strips, the front and the back were too forced because the strip bends, but it was kinking right back here and at the front. So what I've done is I've actually added a small plank between the 6th and the 8th, and then put a whole length, which is the 8th one, putting 2 wedges at the front and the back to cover the holes that were left. The way that I've done it, since I've only done it on one side, here's the other side. I've put a little strip only covering the 4 frames in the middle, this one being the one that was doubled, and now I'm going to add a full length strip from the front to the back. The way that I've done the front, I've tapered it and cut it to size just as I was doing with the other ones, and I've measured it up to the front. Now what I have to do, I've put a little mark in the middle to indicate where it has to line up. And now what I'm going to do is clamp it all down and measure exactly where I have to cut the back part. And when I do that, I will glue only this middle part where the 4 frames match here, and then I'll glue the front and the back and add the wedges to close that hole. So the first step will be to actually clamp it down, taking that measurement, and then cutting the back piece into place, and then gluing it down and doing the wedges. So when I've done that, and when I'm ready to do the wedges, I will come back. Now that the center section had some time to glue in place, a couple of hours, it's time to put the front section. The way to put this one, the best option is to grab a pen and to mark the lines with a couple of lines where the plank connects to the frames, and this way there's not that much glue coming out of all the parts. Important because you don't really want to fill this part with glue, because if not, the wedge later on won't be able to fit. So once the lines are marked, just a little bit of glue on each one of the sections that have been marked is enough to hold the piece in line. Not too much is needed, since it's only the frame that is right there. And that's a little bit too much glue. And then this one up front. Any glue that comes out as an excess can be taken off later, so there's no problem. And the front end right here. And that should be enough glue to hold it on. Now, looking at where the lines are, because that indicates a nice flow of the plank, using the clamps to hold it in place. Should be enough. There we go. There's quite a lot of glue. With the X-Acto knife, just take off the extra That's still there. When the clamps are on, more cleaning can be done. Put another one on there, making sure they're held on well. Another one right here. Cleaning out most of the glue. There's an extra. There's another clamp. Small one. Big ones just don't fit there anymore. And then the last part, it just like was the first 6. Have to hold it down for another 5 minutes or so until it stays down. Meanwhile, we can continue with the cleaning of the excess glue. Right here, right here, on this one as well. There's plenty of time to kill while the front dries out. This glue takes quite a while to dry, so it gives you plenty of time to do this. And that's basically it for the front. Wait 5 minutes and then do the same thing in the back. Following that, then it'll be a matter of making the wedges and no problems there. Okay. Okay, now the lower plank has had time to dry, and it's left these 2 wedge-shaped pieces that have to be filled in. The way of filling them in is first to measure how long they are, and to use that I just use a ruler from IKEA, flexible, and it can bend along the hull to give you an exact measurement of how long the space that has to be filled in needs to be. And I've taken the measurement, and the front one turns out to be 14 centimeters long. So I've used one of the pieces left over from the long planks at the beginning when I had to cut them in half, and I've measured 14 centimeters in length. Now what I'm going to do is using a straight edge ruler, metal ruler, and an X-Acto knife, I'll be putting it along and cutting it into a triangular shape. The best way to do this is to hold it flat. I'm using other spare pieces of plank, and I'll put it down and carefully cut along it and end up with a triangular piece that will fit right in here. It will probably need some tweaking after cutting it out, since obviously it's not a perfect triangle, so it'll probably have to be sanded down a little bit. But when I get it cut out, I'll explain how I'm fitting it in. Okay, now I have the piece cut out approximately, and the way of making sure that it fits in is trying it out little by little. So I try to push it into the hole, and I notice that there is a point when it doesn't go in anymore. So what I do is I mark it, see if any other part will go in, and I see that none of it does. That means that it's far too wide. But being a relatively thin piece of wood, what I now do with a sanding block is to start sanding it down from the point where I put the line, and making it slowly thinner and thinner. And as I go along, I try it out until I see that it fits in correctly. So it's a matter of insisting, and just a little bit of sanding will cover a little bit more, and that way I go down the whole area until it finally fits. It's a bit tedious work, but this ensures that there is no big gaps and that the wedge fits in perfectly. So I'll keep on doing that, and I'll be back when I've managed to get it to fit in. Okay, now the piece has been cut to shape and it fits in the groove pretty snugly. So now the way of attaching it is again with white glue, filling in the space in between, making sure there's a generous amount. Any extra amount will be wiped off pretty easily, especially on the frames. All throughout the joint, because this way the upper and the lower planks will be joined together. I know it looks like an excessive amount, but again, it will be cleaned out later pretty easily. And in this case, better to have extra than not enough. And just keep on adding throughout the whole groove till the front. It's almost like painting it on this time. And a little bit more all the way here to the front. Should be able to wipe in, and then putting the wedge, butting it against the front, and then making sure that it's flat straight in. Would be easier. And there. And then just pushing it down at the same time that you push it down, you can eliminate a lot of the excess glue. And this way you ensure a very tight fit. In this back part, the best option is to use one of the usual clamps and making sure that it tightens down. Now, to make sure that the rest pushes in, the best option is to use anything sharp and pushing it into the groove all the way to the end, like this. Not putting an excessive amount of pressure, but just enough. That should keep it nice and stuck in. The end didn't seem to want to go in. But okay, if it doesn't, then just cutting it off will do. Anything extra will just get cleaned out later on. So that's basically how to put it in. Pushing it in, and then do the same thing with the back part. I'll probably be doing the same thing with the next two layers, since the next strip still seems to be sagging a little bit and not wanting to go completely flat. But basically that's how to cover the holes and to make sure the strip keeps on being flat and flush against all the different frames. Okay, thanks for watching, and we'll see if I have to change the technique and see how many more planks I can add. Okay, here we are. I've done a couple more of the planks, and as I said, I did 2 sets of putting on a filler plank and then a complete one and a filler one, and then the last 2 that I've done are just 2 complete planks. The problem that I've run into now is that when putting a new plank in, it is far too bent if I try to push it against the preceding one. So what I've gone ahead and done, and I've already done it on the other side, is to push it down to make sure that now it's actually sitting flat and against all the frames and leaving a gap. What I've done is actually measured the space of 4 planks, used scraps of 4 other planks, and made sure that there is a space for 4 planks here and here, which are the 2 middle frames, and then added this last one. The only difficulty with this one, and from now onwards with all of them, is that the method of using the binder clips as clamps doesn't work anymore, so I'm using nails to hold it all down. The way that I'm actually doing it is creating the plank itself, making sure that I put marks on it, and therefore I can actually add it. This one will go on this side, and what I've done is already measured where it has to go, and in the 2 middle ones as well I've made 2 little holes, not to break the plank because it's so thin, with a pin vise, and made the little holes to add the first nails. I'll first glue this in, since I already know that it will fit perfectly in front and the back, and when that is glued I will glue the front and the back parts in. So right now that's what I will do. All I have to do is put some glue right in these 2 small areas, and then put the nail in. And once that is done, then I can do the rest. So when I do that, I'll be back. Okay, now the middle has had time to dry. It's a matter of gluing down the front and the back. I'll start by the front. The first thing to do is to mark where the plank goes with a pen, just marking both sides of the plank in each one of the places, so that way you know exactly where to put the glue, since it's better not to put too much glue, and therefore it's easier to not have to clean out the excess. Now, once you've done that, with the pin vise, mark the middle of the plank and make a small hole for where the nail will go. The wood is pretty thin, so it's pretty easy to make the hole just on each one of the planks, sorry, on the frames, in the middle. Doesn't take much pressure. second. Making sure it goes where it has to go. And this one as well. There we go. And the last one right here. And with that, you have the plank prepared to glue in. Now, with a little bit of wood glue, we add it into the parts between the plank and the frame where the mark had been put previously. There it goes. If there's excess, there's no problem, because while it's drying, there's enough time to clean off the excess. Now the tip, which basically just gets filled in with glue. To the full extent of where it will go. And once all that is in, just push the plank where it should go to the front, and keeping it held down, start adding the nails. The nails are pretty easy to add on. Just finding the spot where the hole that you previously drilled is put. And in this case, I'm using just a small hammer and hammering it carefully into place. That's one. Then a second one. A third one. And the last one up at the front. One little trick about this is I'm not hammering them all the way in, so it'll be easier for me to take them out later. As I've done with other ones, I'm holding down the front for a while, and meanwhile, using the X-Acto knife, I just go through all the edges to take off the excess glue, so the following planks will have no trouble to set in place and butt up to the ones which are already on. And just going through each one of them and making sure that they hold on. There we go. There's really no hurry since this glue takes quite a while to set. But better to clean it up when it's dry. As it starts hardening, it starts getting harder and harder. But that way, it's all nice and clean for the next plank to go in. On this side, and finally, this other side. This also gives something to do while this one sticks in, which is already pretty much stuck. So I can let go of the pressure. And that pretty much making sure that everything is stuck into place. No excess glue. And that pretty much has stuck the plank in the front. When that's a little bit dry, I'll go ahead and do the rear one, as I've done the other ones. Putting a little bit of CA all the way here at the end, and then the other 3 frames where they touch the plank with wood glue. And then I'll fill in the 4 planks which are in the middle, and that way planks will be shorter and easier to fill in. So that pretty much covers how to put these planks. And here's the result. All the planks up to row 17 are on, and it's looking good, which means that about 60% of the planking is done, mainly the top half, and it's all nice and dry and pretty hard. There is a bit of a step in these last planks here, but not much. A bit of sanding will take care of that. Now that it's all dry, I have to take off these pins to hold things down, and it's pretty easy to do that, just gently with a pair of pliers, holding the wood close to it, just pulling out, and it comes straight out, no problem. There are small holes that will be left, but some filler will take care of that, and obviously the second planting will hide all that. So that's it for this stage, and stay tuned for the last part of the planking. Thank you for watching, and see you soon.